There we are. Here is our special guest, William Joseph. How are you, William?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, finally live on video, and we finally get to see you.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, first question, which I think people are going to ask is, how many tattoos do you have?
That's a good question. So probably around 20, maybe more. I lost count.
Not too bad. We know you've already got an admirer of that. Maybe
Yeah.
more so after this. So we're talking books and anything related. So let's talk about our vultures and kings. I want
Okay.
to try
Occultist
and
writing.
get an there we are. There we are. So I want to get an idea of where did you come up with the idea for that? What gave you the inspiration?
All right. So most of it came from a dream, but I was also partially inspired by the movies like Alice in Wonderland and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, um,
Oh,
Chronicles of Narnia. So I really wanted to write something that gave animals, that human quality. And I know Lewis Carroll was famous for that. So I just really wanted to kind of pay homage to that. But I also really wanted to have something a little bit more
yeah,
dramatic and kind of like have like some epic kind of scale to it, kind of like how the Chronicles of Narnia does. So
yeah.
it just kind of all came together as one big vision eventually.
So how long did it take to write from?
So I actually started writing it probably in 2008, 2009. And so it was a side project that I would write in when I got stuck in my other books. And then I kind of stopped for a few years. So I only ended up writing it probably for a couple months. And then I picked it up again this past November for NaNoWriMo. And I ended up not completing my goal of finishing it that month, but I just stuck with it and I ended up finishing it in January. So I guess in all, it probably took me maybe 5 months to write it, maybe.
So not too long then, but then you've had the idea for quite some time. So
Yeah,
I
so I was
guess,
able to, kind of fine tune it over the years too. So
yeah, yeah. So I guess when it came to pen to paper, it was quite a quick process for
yeah,
you
it,
on that.
hmm
So I know a lot of people have asked, will there be a follow-up?
you're gonna have to read it to find out.
That's the answer I was expecting. Um, of course, I'm not allowed to give any secrets away. I just give them your answer. Read
hmm
it and find out. So, what age did you start writing? When did you first discover that you had this ability?
Actually, let me see if I can find a photo, and I'll talk while I can find this photo. There's actually a photo of me when I was really little of me writing. I'm not sure how old I was in this photo, but it's pretty funny because of how accurate it is. Let's see here. All right, so I know I always used to write when I was little, but it wasn't until I started to get older where I ended up finding stories that really I felt like needed to be told, and
Yeah.
then I really stuck with it from beginning to end. And that's what really ended up kind of opening up the floodgates, I guess you can say. Oh, here it is. All right, so this is the photo of me writing when I was really little. It's really funny. There's me.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Very young age. Very young age. So you've always
And
had the talent then. Um,
I've always had the
which is,
creative bug, yeah, for sure.
yeah, which has obviously developed over the years. So what was the very first book you wrote, even if it didn't go to publish? What was your first sort of
Hmm.
story, your first creation?
The first, I don't remember if I wrote anything when I was little. I know my This Is War series is what ended up being the first one that I fully finished. I've got a copy of it right here, actually. Let's see if I can get it out. So this is part one of three. Actually, let me reverse this so it's not backwards for everybody. So this is part one of three of my This Is War series, and then I've got the other ones up there. But yeah, so
Ah,
that was my that was my first one that I fully finished all the way through, just from beginning to end, and that took me about 6 years to write that. Just because I mean, it's really big, but it's also um, it's just really big. It's like
So
they
was that intended to be one book which you decided to split into three, or was it always going
yeah.
to be it was
It was
one?
originally I was gonna do it as one book, and then it ended up being way too long, so I ended up having to split it into three. But I think I'm still gonna release like a big, maybe
Yeah.
like a collector's kind of version of it, of all three together.
Wow.
That way people can kind of experience it as I originally intended. But we'll see. I mean,
Fantastic.
I feel like it might be kind of cool.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a few people watching which are saying hello. So hello
Hello,
everyone.
everybody.
Teddy, Piper, Sabrina, um,
Thank you.
congratulations on your new book release. So what future projects are in the running now? You don't have to give the name, but is there anything that you're currently digging into at the moment?
Absolutely. There is an entire wall. I will show you right there. I've
Oh,
got
wow.
quite, I've got quite a few projects. The one on the left, all the way over there, is actually this one, which I'm
Oh,
working
wow.
on. Yep, and that cover was designed by Rebecca Weeks. She is pretty awesome at designing stuff. And so that is that one that I'm working on. It's called The House on the Hill. It is actually, let me go over to my wall right here. I could probably give you guys a little bit of a little thing. So that one's going to be paranormal horror, but fiction,
Wow.
obviously. And then I got a sci-fi thriller action adventure short, which I'm writing for an anthology. And then after that, I've got a book called The Death Watchers, which is going to be crime and suspense. And then I have The Dead West, which will be romance fiction. That's actually going to be a vampire type book. Then after that, I have Alpha, which is erotic horror crime. And then I've got a few other ones that I'm not really sure on yet.
So you're quite a well-organized author then when it comes to planning different projects. You
Yeah.
know what you're working on first to the last project in the queue. So it's kind of you've got a good system going on there.
hmm I have to be as organized as I possibly can. Otherwise, if I start to like go all over the place and I lose some of my ideas, then I just end up like this big jumbled mess. So I try to be OCD
Yeah,
about it.
because I've met authors which are they've tried to work on sort of three or four different projects at one time and it hasn't quite worked out because
hmm
their concentration on each one is just lost because of the amount of information they're trying to take in, and it
hmm
just completely loses their way. So I think your system's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think it's
Yeah, that's
definitely
what I try. I realized that as I was writing different books, I was
yeah,
like, you know what? Let me try to focus this and kind of chop it up into like an organized chart, and then I could see where I'm at, and then that way
yeah,
I could just jump back and forth in between different projects if I want to, but I'll
yeah.
always have where I'm at.
So you're quite a multi-genre author then. You're not afraid to jump in on
I
any
love,
genre.
yeah. No, yeah, I love challenging myself, and I love to also, just write different things too, because I have so many different stories and worlds up in my head. I
Yeah,
just want to try to get them all out there. So.
fantastic. So as you know, the book world has gone through a lot of controversy the
hmm
past couple of weeks,
hmm
and questions have rolled in of what do we think of that. Now, I don't think any of us have really said anything about it,
hmm
at least not over social media. But I suppose it is a topic that does affect everyone. So, what are your thoughts on words now being trademarked? What do you feel that that's going to do to the author community?
I think that I don't think it should be a thing. I don't think that we should be able to trademark words because you can't really
Yeah,
trademark a language, you know? Like, it's,
yeah,
it's not fair to anybody who's previously published a book because now they have to go back and change it. But at the same time, you're limiting the actual
yeah,
language itself. So you're actually, in the end, you're a contradiction because you're a writer trying to create by using language and communicating for people to kind of
yeah,
better, like, the main one of the main purposes of writing books is to try to get people in there, you know, to learn, to
yes.
expand their knowledge, expand their vocabulary, and to limit it by eliminating words one by one because you want to trademark them. It, in the end, hurts both the readers and the writers themselves.
Yeah.
So
It does. I mean, there has been a lot of speculation. Was all this designed as a publicity stunt, or
I, so I
was
think for
she
sure.
genuinely trying to protect her brand and didn't quite understand the backlash that would come from it? It's, I suppose, as a catch-22. I mean, every author is a brand, as you know, and
Oh, for sure.
you want to protect your brand
Hmm.
anyway.
Of course.
But I guess my feeling is there are certain ways you should go about it. But I 100% agree with you that you should not trademark words. I mean, words were created for everyone to use.
I agree.
So I don't think anyone has the right to own them.
Hmm.
And you're right, it does affect everyone from the readers to the writers. You know, there's a lot of authors out there now which not only are having to have their covers changed, some are even having to change their blurbs, their even parts of their manuscript.
Hmm.
You know, you've got to feel absolutely devastated for those affected. Um,
I do. I feel bad for those who were affected.
yeah.
I mean, if I ended up being one of those people that were affected, then she would have another thing coming. So glad that I don't have to change anything. But
Yes, yes, I
she would
can
have to work
imagine.
with William Joseph Hellfire. But
Yes,
I mean, it's definitely a travesty to the community as a whole, but also to the language itself.
it is.
But I feel like, maybe in part she didn't really understand the backlash, or maybe in part she was just doing it for publicity. But either way, it's all going to end up being negative for her. And
It
it's just,
is.
people are going to end up, I know how society is. People are going to buy her
Yeah,
stuff. Then they're going to start leaving poor reviews on purpose just to bring her down. And
exactly.
in the end, she's just, destroying her own career. But
Exactly. I mean, it wasn't obviously less than a week ago now that a
already,
company has come forward now to trademark another word. But obviously the
it's just going to
company
open
did
up
it.
a flood.
It has, but apparently this company has stated that it's not going to stop people from using it. But I
Yeah,
think that the thing that people are worried about is that if they own that word, then there's always that worry that they can pull the rug from under their feet.
I agree.
Um, so I'm guessing at the moment, every author out there currently writing is trying to choose their words carefully.
Hmm.
So rather than keeping with their steady flow, they're having to be a bit more cautious now because of this.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously you've seen social media yourself, and you know the amount of people which have taken a stand together to try and put a stop to this, which fingers crossed, I hope it does work out for
Hmm.
everyone, because you know, authors are there to create and give people something different each time.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the thing you've got to remember is that an author's work always outlives the author.
Oh, for sure.
Always. Once your work's out there, it's out there for centuries, maybe. You just,
Maybe forever. Yeah.
especially with the technology we have now, you know, once it's there, it's there.
Hmm.
It's technology is just evolving all the time. I mean, it's not going to be long now before they create some program where you can talk and it'll make a video for you. It's so
Yeah,
many different things.
I agree.
So I want to get your thoughts now on piracy.
Okay.
Now, again, that's another issue which every author faces at
Hmm.
some point in their career. Your work is going to be stolen.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've already
What are
had that
your,
happen with my
you
magazine,
have?
so yeah, I've seen that up on websites. So
So, what if you had the chance to confront one of these pirates? What would you say to them? What would your advice be to those people stealing?
it's a good question. I'd say, I mean, I guess some people's responses would be a little bit different than others. I guess
Yeah,
for me, I would say, I mean, I don't know. I can't really say at least give me credit because then it's obviously still, you're still stealing it. I mean, I wouldn't appreciate somebody taking my work, but at the same time, you know, it's almost in a weird way a compliment because they love it so much perhaps that they want to either take it and share it to others,
yeah,
or they're just that delusional that they're just like, oh, I'm just going to steal everything I can and just put it out there on the dark web. But I mean, it's kind of iffy because I don't want them to do it, but at the same time, I do want my work in as many people's hands as possible. So,
yeah. I can understand that, and I think a lot of people will always ask how do they earn money from that?
hmm,
Um, I'm guessing it's probably from some form of ad revenue or
I think so, yeah.
system similar to that. But again, you could be right. Some could just like your work that
Hmm.
much to want to do that. It has
Hmm.
been known, and I should imagine it still goes on now. So you could very well be right. Again, it's a sort of a catch-22 situation there. They could either be your number one fan, or they could just be someone just out to earn a quick buck, as
Yeah,
it were.
exactly.
So, so we're coming back to your book now, and quite a common question. Who is your favorite character in that book?
It's a very good question. Every character has their own specific role, but I think if you're reading the story, I would have. I mean, it would be easy for me to say all of them, and it would be easy for me to say the main character, which is Billy. But I think taking those out of the context, like out of the main character and out of all the characters, I would say next to them, I would probably have to say maybe the main bad guy in the book because it's like you get to kind of see, I don't want to give too much away, but when
Yeah,
he gets his moment to kind of talk, you kind of see that he's maybe not as bad as you might think he is and that he has his own reasons for doing
yeah,
what he does. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's like it's a confliction because you feel bad for them, but at the same time, you're like, okay, but you still, don't got to be bad. But when you understand his kind of where he's coming from, then it's like, all right, yeah. So it kind of,
yeah,
I love complex characters. I don't like one-sided characters. Like, oh yeah, this guy's completely good, this guy's completely bad, like black and white. Like
yeah,
I like to put everybody in the gray area because it leaves
yeah.
everything up in the air. So.
So, how much of yourself is in that book? Are there any sort of references or characters that contain a bit of you?
There's a little bit. I guess my adventurous and my courageous side is definitely in the main character of Billy. Um,
Yeah,
Definitely my kind of protective personality are is
yeah,
in Chestnut, one of the other main characters in the book,
yeah,
um, and then kind of my outlook of you got to do whatever is best for everybody
yeah,
is kind of in some of the other characters.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
just there's a little bit in a little bit of everybody almost.
yeah. Okay. So Are there any sort of characters in there which you've based on other people, maybe family or friends?
Hmm. So the Raven that is in this book is actually kind of, it doesn't act like him, obviously exactly, but I have
Yeah.
him in there kind of as a way to pay homage to one of my favorite writers, which is Edgar Allan Poe. And so I was actually in Baltimore last week and I visited his grave for the first time and I actually left a
Oh, wow.
copy of my book at his grave. So I just kind of
Wow.
wanted to be like, here you go, man. So
Wow. He is a great or was a great author, and he
absolutely.
certainly left behind a legacy. Um, when I suppose even the younger generation today, you mentioned the Raven, and
Hmm.
they will lead it back to him because that particular story has evolved so many times over the years,
Hmm.
but still to Edgar Allan Poe's concept, still to his vision, it hasn't really been changed in any way. They've stuck with it. Um, so, speaking of favorite authors, aside Mr. Poe, who are your other top influences?
Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. He's definitely an acquired taste. So if anybody wants to just all of a sudden
Yeah.
dive into reading Shakespeare, it's not going to be easy right away. Um, I love Shakespeare. Let's see, I got a whole bookcase over here. I've got some Stephen King books, which I used to read a lot of that when I was younger. Um, I also have a lot of history books, mostly World War One and World War Two books. But I've got some Bram Stoker. I've got, let's see, what else do I have here? I like a lot of the older stuff. So, like, I've got like the Scarlet
Yeah.
Letter. I have a lot of the classics. Let's see, what else do I have here? I've got Water for Elephants. That was a great book. I love that one, which is also a movie. Um, I do have the Twilight books, actually. So I know a lot of people don't like Stephanie Meyer, but the books were pretty good. Let's see, what else do I have? I got a lot of Tom Clancy books, and that's probably about it, other than some random stuff. Nostradamus, I got him up there.
So you
Yeah.
mentioned Bram Stoker. Now, he was a very interesting author, um, and commonly known for his book Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that they did make the film based on his work. Now we
Mm-hmm.
know the Dracula films have been out since, the war times, really. And but how do you feel he portrayed Dracula? Because obviously Dracula's that's a story that's been told through centuries. But do you think Bram Stoker got the vision right? Do you think he captured the vision of Dracula?
I think so. I think his I think his version of of Dracula is just, I mean, it's just, I think it's solid, I think he's just
I
a
think
very well-rounded writer. I think he just kind of draws the audience in and then leads them along
because
the
his,
path.
I think both book and film, Dracula was more human than anything
Hmm.
else, um,
Hmm.
which I think is a good way to portray a mythical creature like that, because you
It makes
know,
it more
yes, exactly, and yes, we have the culture today of modern day vampires. How do you feel about that? The modern day, do you,
more. Yeah, I mean, like when I think of things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of vampires, or like the
yeah,
movies like where the vampires like turn and like there's still like a human body, but like they've got like vampire-esque qualities to their heads and stuff like that. Me personally, I'm not too big of a fan of that kind of a Dracula or a
Yeah.
vampire, but I'm also not too well off on Stephanie Meyer's glistening vampires. I'm more of the like I like them more to be human-esque, but like maybe a
Yeah.
little bit stronger in their qualities. Now I
Yeah.
know with my The Dead West, that's going to be my own version of vampires, um, which probably fit a little bit more along towards Anne Rice's kind of versions of how she has her vampires, because I love Anne Rice and a lot of her vampire stuff is great. But I think having the more human qualities, or when you add human qualities to any kind of a monster in general, I think
Yeah.
having people relate to them and giving them those qualities just draws the audience in a little bit more because it makes them a little bit more believable.
Yeah. So obviously every day we have new authors bursting onto the scene or aspiring authors wanting to start this journey. What
Hmm.
kind of advice would you give someone that wanted to come into the book world but didn't have that much knowledge of how it is today?
Uh, don't it's you're gonna get overwhelmed real easy. It's definitely an intimidating process. I know when I was done with my books, it took me a few years to get myself out there because I really had no idea where to begin.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, I think, just randomly finding an author on Facebook, or maybe she found me. I don't really remember what happened, but she kind of started to like introduce me to people, and then I kind of just took it from there. You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely for me, it's a little different, especially still learning writing because I didn't have a great English program in the schools that I grew up
Yeah.
in, but learning all the writing nuances is definitely a process. I mean, you're always going to
Yeah.
have your editor and everything like that, but you want to also, you know, it's a teamwork. You want to try to make their
Yeah.
life as easy as possible as well. So try to
Yeah.
learn as much as you can about the writing process. Just get yourself out there, you know, try to make contacts, try to communicate with people, you know, be a part of the community, be active. That way, you know, if you're a positive influence on the community and you're friendly with people, they're more likely going to help you if you have a question or guide you in the right direction. Look up a lot of tutorials, look up a lot of stuff. There's definitely a lot of blogs out there that have great stuff
Yeah.
out there. Um, and then just practice, just keep writing, never stop. You know, if you get stuck and you have writer's block, I always move to another project. That way, my
Yeah.
creativity is still flowing, but I'm not stuck on one project. Then when I return back to my original project, then at least it's, you know, my creativity hadn't stopped. So,
So that's a good way of looking at it really is if you do get writer's block, move on to another project. Don't sort of dwell on it.
yeah.
Keep your mind busy, but on one project at a time.
Yep, I agree.
Good. We do have a question here. How about the vampires in the movie From Dusk Till Dawn?
Okay. Well, if I
Hmm.
haven't seen that in ages, but I think in that one they kind of do change a little bit. They do kind of get some cosmetic kind of things, I think.
Yeah,
So in that that kind of reminds me of like the Lost Boys in a way, like how they kind of
yes,
change. So I
it's a
mean,
cult
their
like
changes
film.
their changes aren't too drastic, so I guess I'm kind of okay with that, like in a movie aspect. But on
Yeah,
a believability aspect, I don't really like if I were to,
it's a
you
bit
know,
no.
vampires, yeah, if vampires were real or one was in front of me, if it looked like that, I'm not sure if I would be like, oh, you're cool.
Yeah,
I'd be like, okay,
exactly, exactly. So, what genre don't you like writing in?
that's a good idea. Good question. Let me see here. Probably, I want to say erotica, just because I feel like, I mean, A, it's not too familiar of a genre for me to be writing in. I haven't really delved into it too much. I haven't really done it yet, but the I think it's just an oversaturated genre as well in the in the world. So it's just
Okay.
a lot of it.
Another question here. How do you feel about the accessibility of authors with fans and how social media influences it?
I think it's good. I think in the traditional way, like how it used to be years ago, we didn't really have that kind of an ability to communicate or interact with our audiences. And so I think being able to do that now has its ups and its downs. I think um, them constantly being around their authors and seeing that can lead to some oversaturation, and you don't, you got to kind of keep that space. You don't want to be so involved in their life that, you know,
Yeah,
get turned off, because you have to remember they're a person too, and their work and who they are as a person are two different things. But at the same time, it's great because, we kind of get that instant feedback if we really need it.
yeah,
Like, hey, what do you guys think of this? And then it kind of
exactly.
also makes the audience feel like they're maybe a little bit part of the stories that you're writing, because you could reach out and ask their opinions on something, and they
Yeah,
kind of feel like they're a part of the process.
exactly. And how do you feel about the changes coming on to social media at the moment, specifically Facebook, with their, obviously you've noticed that they've clamped down on a lot of things and they're not quite done yet, because
Yeah.
now they're planning on um, changing the way groups work. So basically what they're going to do is, when you post into a group, not everyone's going to see it unless you pay for it, similar
Yeah.
to Pages. I mean, what are your feelings on that? Do you think they're heading in the right direction for the users of social media, or do you think that greed is now playing a big part in the changes?
I definitely think it's the greed aspect. I think it's always, you know, you're always going to release something, like they release Facebook, and then people are going to, not necessarily abuse it, but they're going to, reach out and they're going to try to construct it in a way that best suits their community. And then they're going to try to, they're going to be like, hey, this is an untapped resource that we have, so we might as well try to tap into it. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
big corporations for you. So I don't necessarily agree with it. I think eliminating certain things and making it harder for people to see what's actually out there is going to hurt a lot of people.
It is. I mean, it obviously took a massive, massive toll on the Pages, and we
Hmm.
obviously know now it's taken a huge hit on our own profiles,
Hmm.
because you know you can post something up, but not everyone's going to see that, which
Hmm.
is ludicrous because it never used to be like that. It used to be so
Yeah.
easy, but now it's like, my feeling is, are they going to eventually go down the route of turning this into a membership site where we'd have to pay to use it?
They might. I mean, I'm not sure what the future might hold, especially with how, the whole government is now trying to get involved with Facebook, and, trying to, get all the, all the control in there, and all the, what can everybody see and stuff. So like,
Yeah,
it used to be you post something, you might get, I mean, for me, I don't have that many Facebook friends compared to some people, but you might get 10 to 20 people reacting to it. And now
exactly.
you'll be lucky if you get even five. So
Exactly.
it's
You
crazy.
you are absolutely right there. And I think that I do sometimes get the feeling that the users of social media are being used by the government just to give them information, um, which
Mm.
it's kind of upsetting to see that, because we're obviously here to, communicate and, um, evolve with other people. But I think since all these restrictions come in, it's certainly making it harder and harder. And as you know, a lot of people now are jumping ship over to MeWe, which
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you've used a lot of that. Um,
I kind of started to, so I'm trying to get a hang of it.
it obviously it's got features that Facebook has, but as they say, there's no restrictions. Well, their tagline is no tracking, no bullshit, basically.
Yeah.
So it's quite an honest and open social network, which it's nice to see. Um, Now, obviously, when back in the early noughties, social media was just coming in. What social media platform do you miss from the past that is no longer with us?
That's a good question. Um, I used to use AIM a lot, but definitely probably I want to say MySpace maybe. I mean, it's definitely not what it used to be, but I used to be all about
Yeah,
that. I used to be anti-Facebook when Facebook first came out,
yeah,
and I just stayed on MySpace for the longest time. And I just loved it because I used to communicate with a lot of bands on there,
yeah.
and how I basically kind of, you know, was introduced to social media. I was on MySpace. I was talking with bands that I loved, before they were even big, and now they're big. So, or now they're not even around anymore. But to show my
Yeah.
age, but I mean, some of them, you got that communication out there, and it was just a good way of, kind of just branching yourself out there, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there was Bebo, Mingleville.
Hmm.
There were some classic ones back then, which were very good, simple
Hmm.
and easy to use. And but it's like with today's stuff, social media, there's just so much stuff which you can use, and I think a lot of people wouldn't even know how to use half of this stuff that we're given.
Hmm.
It's like if you go onto your author page and have a really good look in the background, there are tons of things you can do with that page. And
Hmm.
I think without actually researching, authors tend to become stuck on what they're meant to be doing with the page. So, you know, I think the only advice we could give there is research the page, have a look, dig around,
Yeah.
it's good. So, another question. What what are your hobbies when you're not writing?
Okay, so when I'm not writing, I work on my own magazine, which is my alternative magazine. I also do photography, which here's my camera right here. Do photos,
Oh,
and I also do video games. I'm also on Twitch. I am an affiliate, so people actually do pay to watch me play sometimes.
wow.
Um, what else do I do? And then I just love being outside too. I like, just uh, hiking outside or traveling or just seeing new things. I love traveling.
So you seem quite a very switched on person, and
Mm.
obviously one that's very creative, and you don't seem like the person that would ever be on stop. You just like to keep going.
Always
Um,
going. My brain is always going 24/7, 24/7.
so we've had another question in. Do you ever allow your mind to switch off from being creative, or do you find that you are always planning and scheming your next scene?
Always, 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 always scheming, always planning, always moving. Um, uh, I actually can't even tell you. It's probably less than 5 times in my life that I can actually remember where I would just sit there and have a clear mind. Like I never relax. I'm always going, always trying to make something, always trying to. Yep, see, Mandy knows. I never stop.
Yeah.
I'm always.
Um, yes, William never stops. That's true. Um, but it is, I mean, you're constantly doing something. Like I got to ask, but do you actually sleep?
I do sometimes. I mean, I usually get probably maybe between 3 to 5 hours of sleep a night, just because that's all I need. I don't really need a lot of
Yeah.
sleep. I just run on pure energy. I don't even drink coffee or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now that does shock me. That really does shock me.
Yeah.
So, can you switch off from creativity if you want to say, right, I've done my work now, I just want an hour to relax. Can you switch off, or are you still constantly going in your
Yeah, like
mind?
I mean, if I want to, I mean, kind of in a way, like if I want to like sit down and watch a movie or something like that, then
Yeah.
yeah, I can just kind of, just go put a movie on and sit there and just watch it. But sometimes when I'm watching the movie, I'll be like, all right, how can I make this better? Or if I made this, what would I have
Yeah.
done? There's always something going probably in my.
Always something, yeah. So, talking about the movie industry now, they're doing a lot of films based off comics at the moment, but also more remakes coming up. Do you think they should concentrate more on new things rather than concentrate on remaking previous projects over and over again?
I do. I think that they should focus on more new ideas. I think I mean, unless there's just really a lack of creative people in Hollywood, I don't know. Maybe I haven't gone over there, so I mean, if anybody in Hollywood's looking for somebody, you can hire me.
Yeah.
But if I mean, they really need some creative new ideas. I mean, I understand there's some things that maybe were made years ago that the technology just really wasn't there yet, and they kind of want to try it again in a different light, which is fine. Or maybe somebody reinterprets it and it's a completely different way now. That's understandable. But I think you really need to focus on new ideas, fresh ideas. I think, Hollywood is kind of growing stale a little bit, so you really need to kind of put some new blood, some
Yeah,
new stories in there, and just really challenge your audience. I mean, I feel like there's just not enough.
yeah. I mean, Hollywood's obviously come under a lot of controversy of late, between things that have happened, but way back. Um, but I have to agree with you. They should be looking for fresh ideas, and you might be right. Perhaps their creative teams aren't really being that creative. We are seeing a lot more book to movies now than we did a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that does suggest that there are some creativity, um, someone behind that going out there and looking for books which are obviously standing out to them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that unless, I mean, you used to be able to send them like a screenwrite and then have a look at the first couple of pages maybe, and that most of the time that was it. You'd never hear from them. Whereas now, I think because the internet's just exploded, and as you know, that we have got contacts in Hollywood itself,
Mm-hmm.
um, the way um, forward is we need to push the ideas onto them,
Mm-hmm.
because this year we're getting yet another Halloween film. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think that died at H2O.
Yeah, for me that was the last one. So.
Yeah, that was it. I know they made more after that, but I think it just died at H2O. I know Rob Zombie wanted to try his luck, but I think by that point it was just too late to save that franchise. And
Mhm.
I have to agree that they do need new ideas. They do need to create something new. Um,
Mhm.
and yet here is a person with ideas that would look fantastic on film.
Mhm.
So, producers, if you are watching this or going to watch this on YouTube, The answer is here. You know, creativity is here. Do away with whatever team you've got. You just need one person that will push ideas onto you.
I've
Um,
got hundreds of ideas. So
so, I mean, at the moment, as you know, a few years ago, the erotic genre sort of really took the top spot,
hmm
courtesy of E.L. James.
hmm
And everyone wanted to be E.L. James after that.
hmm yeah.
But do you feel that that genre has now come down?
I think so. I think every genre has its moments. I think even with JK's Harry Potter, that really
Yeah,
blew the fantasy genre up. And a lot of people, just started going, oh my God, I've got inspired, I've got all these ideas, let's put them out there. And then, I think every genre kind of has, it's like almost like an ocean wave, like there's going to be times where it drops and then there's going to be, some new idea comes up and it sparks it and it goes back up again and then kind of
yeah.
steadies out, So I think every genre has its times.
I mean, at the moment, fantasy's crept back up,
hmm
thriller is back up there. Horror, since the remake of It came out, the horror
hmm
genre's gone back up. Even poetry has managed to climb its way back up after many, many years of being in the lower tier.
hmm
Um, so, do you think when genres go down, do you think it does affect authors?
I think so. I think, I mean, as an author myself, I mean, I'm going to have my ideas. I'm going to write them no matter what, regardless of what's going on in other industries or the world. But so I think if we have our stories that we want to tell, we're going to tell them no matter what. But
Yeah,
I think there's definitely times where if you are in that forefront of the wave when it's about to go up, I think it's going to definitely boost obviously your sales, but it's also going to boost the genre itself when you have that influx that all kind of comes together all at the same time.
yeah.
So
Another question: what about chick lit slash romance?
I feel like that's always going to be there. I feel like
Yeah,
you're going to have movie
yes.
book
I
that's always popular, I think.
I think I remember when I was a kid and my nan was a massive reader and she would always have these romance books lying about with the old they wasn't actual people on it. It was like an artistic version of a woman and a man
hmm
cuddling in the wind with the
Yeah.
dress flowing,
hmm
those sort of books. I mean, with today's standards, obviously we can do a lot more with book covers. Do you think that they kind of stand out more than what they used to, or do you prefer some of the old traditional ways?
I think I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to covers. I think I like a lot of the older kind of book covers. I think today
Yeah,
some of them I think are a little too manipulated, where it can kind of um, catch somebody's eyes, but maybe for the wrong reasons. But I think for me, I like a lot of simple stuff, but I also like a lot of like traditional things. So like
yeah,
for my This Is War series, or even like my short story Jeremiah, like it's very simple, but it's also kind of eye catching at the same time. But I like a lot of you know of the trying to think of the word that I'm looking for. But I'm just looking like a lot of the traditional stuff, like so, like the Harry Potter covers, for example. A lot of the hand drawn stuff, all that good stuff. I think of the traditional art. I think for me personally is really nice.
I mean, I think sometimes simple is better, um,
hmm I
because
agree.
simple can send out such a huge statement. Okay, simple doesn't work with every book,
hmm
but it can work, I think, for
I,
most.
I think going simple or going too loud, I think it can be risky, or it could pay off either way, really.
Yes, yes, I agree there. Um, okay, we just discovered the books we was on about were Mills and Boone or Boone, Mills and Boone. I learn something new every day. I was massively actually into in my young years into R.L. Stein when
Hmm.
he
Fun.
first started bringing out the Goosebumps, and
Hmm.
as silly as they were, I think at the time they were quite. I, I think his style of writing, it just instantly gave you that vision.
Hmm.
You just knew exactly where you was and what who the characters were, and
Hmm.
even though he was such a simple writer, it worked. It really
It
did
did.
work.
It was very effective, and it tickled the imagination for sure. Absolutely.
It did. I I think the one I didn't really like that much was the dummy, because
Oh, yeah, the dummy one. Yeah.
he he came back a few times, but you don't really see a lot of those type books anymore,
Yeah, I
which
miss
were
that.
obviously aimed for children to try and um, educate them a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. So, do you think that we should be doing more to provide books for children to sort of learn from? And you've obviously got the different various age groups, but do you think we should be doing more to encourage them to read, ready
Absolutely.
for the next generation?
Absolutely. I definitely think we need to challenge our younger generations for sure. I mean, knowing me personally, when I was going through the public school system here in the United States, I know when I was in elementary school and I was in my younger grades, they encouraged reading. You know, we had our own library. I think once or twice a week we could go and check out books and bring them home and read them. I was always choosing the scary stories and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
um, I definitely think that we need to encourage our children. We definitely need to push literature on them, but in fun ways. I think we need to make it educational
yes,
but fun. I think, drowning them in literature isn't necessarily going to get them interested in it. And I definitely think that children need to read more than they are to get that literacy up, because I know when I was in 12th grade, which is our final grade here in high school, I was in English class and we would have to read out loud. And I was one of the only students out of 20 something students who could read fluently without pausing in between every word. And that just breaks my heart. I don't want to see kids who are in 12th grade, they're 18 years old going out into the
yeah,
world and they could just barely read. It's a shame.
yeah. I mean, today's generation is all about technology these days. It really is. And as you say, back in our day, we was encouraged to read. We was encouraged to create stories.
Hmm.
I mean, do you think it would help if authors went to schools and sort of gave talks on how important reading is and how important creativity is? Because obviously everyone will read at some point in their life. They have to.
Hmm. They
Um,
have.
even if it's reading a message on social media, you're reading. So
To.
do you think we should kind of encourage more of them to push for their creative side rather than relying on technology itself?
Hmm. I do. I think that as an author and as a writer, I think it's kind of a responsibility that we have to make sure that the work that we're putting out there
Yeah,
is, I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be educational in a way, but I feel like because we're being a part of that creative process, I think it's definitely a responsibility to kind of show the way that, hey, it's okay to be
yeah,
creative. I think today's society, especially with technology, it's all about making life simple and quick and effective. And, who's going to go to college, who's going to get the best
yeah,
degree, who's going to get the biggest job, who's going to get the biggest house. And I think we're losing a lot of the imagination in our younger generations, and they're kind of growing up to be
Yeah.
machines. And I feel like we're losing that, and we need to kind of take a few steps back.
I mean, we've had a few comments here from Sabrina, Ruth, Kira, that they are encouraging their children to read, and they obviously picked up on that. Some have even started writing themselves, which is absolutely fantastic. So it
Great.
is good to see that there is a percentage of people out there encouraging that. But
Hmm.
again, I have to agree that we should be doing more to encourage that, kind of move them away from, you don't have to rely on your phone. Just, you know, in my day, it was a pen and paper, and
Yeah.
that's how we would create.
Hmm.
Whereas now it's on a computer, type it in, there's your answer. I
Hmm.
think it's been made so easy for this generation that I'd hate to say it, but some of this generation just seem like robots.
They absolutely do, for sure.
Like I was literally in a city on Wednesday, and I was just looking out of a window from this office, and there was about four people at this bus stop, but each of them on their phone like that. And
Hmm.
it was like, do you know, back in my day, if you was in a bus stop, you'd talk to
You're
whoever
talking with,
was there, you'd
yeah, we're
communicate. And
losing that. Yeah, we're losing that.
whereas now you're just like that with your phone in a corner, huddling away from everyone else. It's almost as if technology has taken over minds,
Hmm.
and
It has.
it is scary. Don't you think text type is ruining the English language?
It is, for sure. I
Yeah,
think a
yeah,
lot of the the slang terms. I think a lot of people are
it
just
is.
they're just using slang all the time
Yeah,
now. Just
I
text slang.
mean, when LOL or LOL first came about and people started saying that to me, I'd be like, what? What does that mean? And
Hmm.
it actually took me about 2 years before I found out what it meant. But it was
Yeah.
like, where is this strange language coming from? But I think Ella is right. This text type is ruining the English language, and
Hmm.
I do think that we have got the power to not stop that, but at least calm it down and teach our next generation that you don't have to put these silly words like when someone texts you and you just get K back.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like,
like what? It's like I just typed this long ass story for
so,
you, and you're just gonna K
I,
me.
yeah,
Like what?
I've just spent 10 minutes writing this story, and all I get back is the letter K. And it's like,
Yeah.
is this what creativity has come to in this next generation?
Yeah.
It's really sad to see. It really is. And I do think we should be encouraging more. I know personally myself will be visiting schools to give talks and to remind them that they do have their own minds to create. They don't have to rely on technology all the time. Yes, technology helps, but
Hmm.
if you rely on it 100% of the time, essentially, you just become a robot. You're not actually thinking for yourself. You're not
Hmm.
creating for yourself,
Yeah,
which it's a scary, scary thought that that is where we're heading at the moment.
I agree.
Um, kids of today, they think they invented shorthand. They are very wrong. As a PA, I used to text type language, and it hasn't ruined my use of language. As long as they are learning in school, they will be fine. Do you feel that schools are doing enough to encourage in this generation compared to
Absolutely.
what used to?
Absolutely. I mean, my thoughts on the education system are pretty extreme, but
Yeah,
I de especially here in the United States, I know our schools teach for the test. You know, they have their budgets that they have to pass at the end of the year, and so the teachers have to basically just teach the test. And if you pass at the end of the year, that's great. We pass our budget, and then we move on to the next year. Whereas, you know, if you have a student that falls back, you can only help them so much before they fall so far back that you have to say, oh well, you know, I got to focus on the, you know, 22 of my other students in the class, and that one, you know, sadly is going to fall behind. But hey, you know, 22 out of 23, I guess, isn't bad, you know, for our people in the upper echelon of the education system. But I think there's definitely not enough going on. I think we're all about, hey, you know, X plus Y equals Z and this and that, you know, sorry for anybody who likes math, but I mean, when are you really using that in your life? You know, I think we need to teach our children more of how to think for yourself, you know, how to use your creativity, you know, how to address certain situations, you know, how to communicate with each other, especially in a world where technology is continuing to grow and to be more of a use and is literally taking over our lives. We're losing that, and with, you know, children losing that, you know, interpersonal relationships with people, it's just making it even harder for them when they grow up.
I mean, do you think we've become a bit too advanced for our own good at the
I think
moment?
so. I think so. I think it takes time to adapt as a species, and I think as a species, I think we might be moving a little too quickly, especially these last 20, 30 years. I think we're just progressing so fast with technology that we're starting to lose sight of, you know, what we used to be. So,
I mean, there's obviously we know there's artificial intelligence now,
mhm,
because there was the big thing with Facebook where part of their system had created its own language and started speaking to other systems, which is kind of scary, knowing that artificial intelligence is real because we've created that. But
mhm.
I mean, how do you feel about AI thinking for itself, which clearly it can do now?
I mean, I'm not too much of a fan. I think technology as a tool is great, but I don't think that tools need to speak, you know, need to think for themselves. I think using technology to better aid our own species and furthering ourselves is great. But once we give what we need, well, what we're going to end up having to rely solely on to survive, once we give that
Yeah.
tool its, you know, its own thought process, it's just going to look at us and say, well, they need us to survive, but we're at a point now where we control everything. We don't need them. So then it's just going to eliminate us, especially once it starts to realize how much damage we do to the planet. So basically, Skynet and Terminator all over again.
Well, we do have an interesting comment here. My husband is a teacher, and he says that the education system now has declined in the past 15 years. They
Hmm.
don't even teach cursive writing anymore.
Hmm.
What that is,
Sad.
um, and to add, can you imagine a generation that cannot sign their names? I
It's
mean,
terrible.
obviously, we can't apply this to every country because every country is different.
Hmm.
I mean, I know over here, our educational system is a lot probably stricter than what it used to be,
Hmm.
um, but it's also a lot harder, especially when it comes to exams. They have made it um, very hard now, obviously putting a lot of pressure on the younger generation. And I
Hmm.
think between that and technology, I don't know. I mean, maybe that is putting too much pressure on them. Maybe,
I think so.
should we allow them to grow up, or are we forcing them to grow up? I think there's a fine line there of
Yeah,
what we're actually doing.
I think that's what's kind of going on now. I think we're forcing our
Yeah.
children to be adults and think like adults before they're even there. I know when I was in college and I was taking education courses, I had to do observation and I had to teach myself when
Yeah.
I was, I had to teach a class in school for a few months, and I taught first grade for a few months. And the teacher was telling me that they have to, at the end of the year, mind you, this is first grade, at the end of the year, they have to take a very important exam for the school to basically assess where they're at. But these are, 6 and 7 year olds, and they were being forced at the end of the school year to sit at a computer and take an exam for an hour. And some of them, most of them can't even do it. They're only 6 or 7. A
Yeah.
lot of them are sitting there and they're just crying. And that's
Yeah.
not fair to them. I mean, when I was in first grade, it was flashcards and it was, let's play out on the playground and learning
Yeah.
basic words. And, now it's just, well, I think we're just putting too much on the younger generations now.
I mean, I think back when I was a kid, the best form of education was outdoors,
Hmm.
and
Learning.
learning about it, even if it was like going into the back garden and playing with the mud and the
Hmm.
worms and the other creatures you'd find.
Hmm.
To me, that was the best way of learning the outside world, because
Hmm.
you're discovering and learning at the same time. It was, whereas today you just don't. I, Personally, I
Yeah.
don't really see many children out playing anymore. I really don't.
I mean,
Uh,
I still, yeah, I don't see anybody in my neighborhoods, really outside playing. I mean, maybe if they're like super little, you might see them in their front yard for a little bit before they run back inside. But it's just, you don't really see kids out riding their bikes anymore or anything like that. It's sad.
yeah. So we go back to your book now. Now, your book is intended for children,
Hmm.
um, as well as adults.
Hmm.
Um, so would you say your style of writing would um, open up their own imagination for a child?
Yeah, I think the way that I wrote it is across generational. So, um,
Yeah,
basically, you can kind of return back to A Vultures and Kings at any point in your life, and you'll get a different message from it. Just because the
yeah,
way that I wrote it, it's intended. It has its intended audience, but you could really read it at any time, no matter what your age is. You could be 90, you could be 40, you could be 10. And you're gonna
yeah,
get something out of it, you know, no matter what age you are. And so that's basically, I just wanted to write something that basically anybody can relate to at any age. And
yeah,
that's basically it, really.
yeah, yeah. I agree there. I mean, you've obviously got you can write for any sort of age. You know the boundaries and the words that you can use, and it's great to see that you can be a multi-genre author, which
Hmm.
not every author will have that gift.
Yeah.
Some quite happy just doing the one or two genres. But I guess when you're kind of in each of them, um, I mean, your mind just must be exploding with ideas, even beyond your schedule. Um,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Always 24/7. But
yeah,
yeah, it's great. It's great, for the people who can stick to one genre and they're perfectly happy with that. All the power to them. But me, I'm always about what's next. I want to always push myself. I want to be able to challenge myself, even if I end up finding a genre that I write that I can't do well. I'm still going to try to get better at it. And in part,
yeah,
it's I want to be the best, but I know I'm never going to be the best at everything. But it's just a matter of I just want to be as good as I possibly can be, with my own skills and my own brain, and just try as many different things as I possibly
But
can. And
obviously,
that's it.
you're your own unique person.
Hmm.
Um, so no one can ever take that away from you. I think every author is good. Every author um, does what they do very well. They have their own thing going on. Do you think that authors should kind of stick together? Because obviously, what I got to try and word this very carefully now. We obviously know the issues that have been evolving in the indie community, and we obviously know that there is cliques out there, um, and we know how they work.
Hmm.
Do you think that some authors are just trampling on others just to get to the top?
For
I
sure.
mean, I
I
don't think I'm wrong in saying that.
I definitely think there is. I mean, you're always going to have your bullies in any community. You're always going to have some that
Yeah,
try to abuse the spotlight, or who try to cash in on others, or you know, I want to, part of me is like, oh, I hope that's not there, but the realist in me, I know that that's out there. I try to avoid those clicks. I try to avoid that. I just try to be me, and I just try to boost up the other people who do reach out to me. I try to boost us all up, so
yeah,
that everybody is, together. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. Hopefully, we all want our books to be read by people and loved.
yeah,
So we all work together.
yeah, exactly. I mean, this world needs authors because they're the creative minds.
Hmm.
But I don't think this world needs is authors that have come into this thinking that they're better than everyone else, which
I agree.
we do see quite often on here. And some of their tactics are very questionable.
Hmm.
Um, and we see most days some form of bullying going on, not just with indie authors, though it can happen to traditional authors too. It has happened there too.
Hmm.
Um, and you're right, Ruth. Ruth has just said no, it should be a community, it should be supportive. And that's one of the things I'm trying to campaign for is for more publishers to provide more support, not just for the authors that they look after. And there are a couple of publishing companies which don't even do that. But I, I do think that any company involved in the book world should support authors more than what they have been, or you know, give them give them a hand, if they need it, because over the years we have lost some good authors which unfortunately have taken their own lives because of the the bullies, basically the authors that have trampled on them and just, I mean, what would you say to those bullies right now that will probably see this?
I'd say get the hell out of this community.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want you. It's I've been dealing with bullies my whole life, and especially when I was a younger kid, and you're just, you're not welcome. It doesn't matter what you do. You might break
Yeah.
some of us, but in the end, you're no better than any of us. And even though, me myself, I strive to be the best that I can be,
Yeah.
and I hope that my book,
Yeah.
or all of my books, or even hopefully just one of them I'd be happy with, reaches, number one bestseller somewhere. You
Yeah.
know, I don't want to take that away from anybody else either, because at the same time, that would be great for me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as long as everybody is out there creating and we're putting things out there and we're working together, you know, that's all I want, because I want the community itself, you know, to be good. Because what example is that really setting for the younger generations? You know, we don't want them to say, hey, you know, these people are telling us to be creative and to write books and pursue that, but they're all bickering with each other, you know, they're all fighting with each other, and we don't want
Yeah,
that, you know. We want this to be something that people look forward to doing because they enjoy doing it, and we want people to
exactly.
have that imagination. We don't want them to be scared to show that they have one, you know.
Exactly. You've just nailed it on the head there. You are absolutely nailed it on the head. We should be supporting each other more. We should be a community, and the bullies should go. You know, I
Hmm.
I will say this to any author: if you're coming into this thinking you're going to be an instant millionaire and that you're going to trample over everyone in your path to do that,
Ain't gonna
then
happen.
I would say sit on your couch and don't move, because it doesn't work like that. It
You
really
gotta
doesn't.
be in it for you gotta be in it for the right reasons. I mean, if you think
It-
you're going, you know, to be an author because you're gonna be a millionaire and you're gonna be the next J.K. Rowling and you're gonna have a Harry Potter series and you're gonna become a
exactly.
billionaire, you know, it doesn't have. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of, you know,
It
it's a lot
is.
of ass kissing. It's a lot of making friends. It's a lot of helping each other, supporting each other. A lot of
It
groundwork, and
is.
you
It
know,
really
gotta,
is. I mean,
yeah.
even publishers get the same problem, because we're also kind of restricted in certain aspects, and we also have issues with other publishing companies trying to bully, which
Hmm.
I've seen it plenty of times over the years. And yes, books can be successful, but it does take time. And
Hmm.
as long as you have a clear mind, but a positive mind,
Hmm.
it will happen. Just
Hmm.
as you say, it's not in an instant. You just,
Hmm.
well, as Eddie said, just aim to be the next you, be you.
Keep
And
that love, keep that passion,
yeah,
and
and I
just go for
think, yeah, I think that is the way forward. Be yourself, and
it.
you will be successful in your own right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, are there any final words from yourself? Any final bits of advice uh, for the viewers, obviously live and our YouTube audience?
Check out my book.
Yes,
um,
check out the book.
besides that, you know, just, I mean, if you do check out my work, I hope that you enjoy it. Just, you know, get lost in it, enjoy it. But I want people to just, you know, as we discussed earlier in the video, you know, just pursue your own creative, you know, your own creative outlets, you know, if whether you're an artist, whether you're, you know, painter, a photographer, whatever, you know, just don't let anybody, you know, rain on your parade. You know, if somebody tells you, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you know, oh, you'll never make it with that, who cares? You know, if you have a creative, you know, imagination and you want to express it in a way that, you know, as long as it doesn't harm anybody, and you know it's artistic, or you know, you want to write a book or something like that, do it. You know, it's this is, who knows, this could be the only life that you get, and you know, 80 years from now you don't want to look back and say, hey, you know, that I really wish I wrote that book, or hey, I really wish I, you know, I traveled here or traveled there. You know, just do it. You know,
So,
just enjoy yourself. That's it.
fantastic. And obviously, for anyone that does want to check out William's books, we will be putting the links up to his work in this video. Um, we will obviously get this onto YouTube for our YouTube audience to view this, but all the links to William's work will be up here. Um, you can look him up on social media too. He's a nice guy, friendly to
No
talk to.
problem.
As you can see, this is the real William Joseph here.
This is
Um, and I think now we've got, I feel that we've got to know you as a person as
mhm,
well as an author. And
mhm,
you are very down to earth,
Hmm.
very creative.
Hmm.
Um, and Rob's just put he'll be 127 in 80 years. I don't think I'd want to live that long. But no, I think that we've definitely got an insight into your life, and I think we would love to interview you again in the future after you've completed some of your future projects, to
Absolutely.
kind of see where you're at and, keep everyone up to date, I think.
I'm always
I
down
think
for
that's
that. Oh,
fantastic. Well, we shall say goodbye to our live Facebook audience for now. So I'd like to thank everyone that has watched, and obviously had your input in some of the topics tonight. But I'd
thank you,
really like to
everybody.
give a special thank you to William for joining us tonight for our first Friday night book plug.
My
So
pleasure.
please check out his book of Vultures and Kings on every major platform you can think of. It will be there. And if it's not, tell me and I'll get it there. Um, but again, William, thank you so much. And thank you for the audience for tuning in. And William, I will speak to you soon. And
All right.
everyone watching, thank you so much. And obviously, we'll be back next Friday. William, thank you very much for taking part. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.